All instruments in the drum kit of Superior Drummer 3 are close mic'd. Bleed is the sound of other instruments in the kit leaking into the close mic of the intended instrument. For example, a close mic on the kick will pick up the cymbals when they're struck. Or the hi-hat mic will pick up the snare drum. Superior Drummer 3 gives you the choice to have this signal present in any amount in its mixer. But the question is, should you use bleed in the mixer? Well, like all complicated issues in life, the answer is, it depends. If this is your drum track and genre of music, then you probably don't want the cymbals in the highly compressed and EQ'd kick mics. But you may want to hear a bit of the kick drum in the bottom snare mic, as this particular bleed can contribute to the recording's realism. However, if a more organic drum sound is what you're after, like this one, then bleed can enhance the natural ambience of the kit in a different way from the room mics. You always have to keep in mind that the bleed you enable on the channel will also go into the processing on that channel. This is where bleed levels and custom bleed enablement can be useful. When compressing channels, bleed levels can get too loud or have unwanted effects. Here, all you need to do is either remove the instrument in the bleed properties, lower its volume, or globally lower the volume of all bleed. It's a common practice to send many of the instruments in the kit to a bus, where you may insert a reverb or a parallel compressor. With traditionally recorded drums, where the bleed cannot be separated, compromises are often made. Here you want to send the snare signal to a reverb, but not all the bleed in the snare mic. So you try gates and some other tricks, but it's never as perfect as the isolated signal. However, with Superior Drummer 3, this is possible, because with a pre-fader send, you can separate the bleed from the direct signal in the send. This means that you can have your original snare channel with the desired amount of bleed and your reverb returns with no bleed at all. Using this type of send would also work well for parallel compression or any parallel processing. The bleed properties of the overheads can be thought of as a mini mixer for a stereo capture of the drum kit as a whole. Here, the close mic instruments are the cymbals, and the bleed is everything else in the kit. This is typically an example of desirable bleed. Of course, some mixing engineers want completely isolated cymbals, but for many drum recordings, the overheads provide an overall stereo picture of the kit that sounds really great. Again, the levels of any instrument in the overheads can be adjusted in volume. Just like the overheads, bleed properties for room channels are essentially a mini mixer for the instruments in that channel. The only difference is that there are no closed mic instruments for the room channels. This means that you can mix stereo room mics after they're recorded. When compressing, it's possible to add the perfect amount of cymbals to the channel to avoid the horrible pumping sound. Or maybe you want a big reverb for the shells in the kit. Instead of loading a plugin, you could enable the desired drums in one of the far room channels. This is better than any convolution reverb because it's a real recording of that instrument in that space, not an emulation. Then, just add a gate, and suddenly you're copying one of the most famous drum sounds of all time. Nearly anything is possible with Superior Drummer 3. Head over to tunetrack.com for more information.